Hi, welcome to Encouragement for today. I'm Pastor Emily. At the church, we just finished up a study on the Lord's Prayer, and last night we were looking at the final line, the doxology. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. And this line, you may have noticed it's not actually in the Gospels. It's a line that was added by the early church, and some believe that it goes back to a prayer that King David prayed in the Old Testament, where he was thanking God that ultimately their ability to be generous as a people, King David says, is because everything comes from God. So they're remembering in their perspective to put God above all else. So one of the challenges that came up in our reading and in the message that we listened to last night is, where is the kingdom of God in our priority list? Is it above politics, or have we accidentally let it slip below politics? Or maybe we've enmeshed the two. And we were reminded that as Christians, we're called to serve God first. And we're called to serve. We're not called to seek out positions of power. And that power can be used in really good ways. I'm not saying that politics are evil, but where we place our heart allegiance is really important. And to crave power at the expense of our faith and character can be problematic from any angle. One of the passages that came up as we talked about power was when the disciples asked Jesus, like, hey, who's going to sit on your right and your left in the kingdom of heaven? They want the positions of power. And Jesus calls them out and he says, no, if you want to be greatest, you need to be a servant. Even when we look at the way that Jesus came, he didn't come as a political authority. He was a baby that was born in a stable and laid in an animal feeding trough. He was a refugee as a small child when they had to flee for Egypt as a family. And in Jesus's adult ministry, he constantly lifts up and pays attention to the most vulnerable and those that society dismissed. Even if you think about the story where the man says, well, who is my neighbor? If I have to love my neighbor, who is this neighbor? And Jesus, he tells this story where the example of the one who acts as a good neighbor is the Good Samaritan. And Samaritans were considered the religiously incorrect by the Jewish people. So Jesus is shifting their vision and getting them to see and think in a different kind of way. When we give our ultimate allegiance to God's kingdom, this is the way of being that we are invited into. It's how Jesus was and how Jesus calls us to be. So the invitation in our lives is to look at what are the positions of power or influence that we have. It may be as simple as in our family, the way we engage with children, spouses, aunts, uncles, grandparents. How do we use those positions of influence to serve and to bring more of the good fruits of the kingdom of heaven on earth? We can also think about workplaces or how we engage in society in general with people we come in contact with. How do we use our position in the world to glorify God and remember that it's not about getting more for ourselves, but learning to find joy in participating and serving? We'll talk to you again soon.